Hello, my name is Timothy V and welcome to part 2 of the minimum security settings for law firms. Let's not waste any more time and get started where we left off. Number 6, Account Lockout Policy. Vulnerability. An account locking out multiple times is an indication that someone is trying to guess a password. Potential impact. If this setting is not set, a hacker can use a brute force attack to guess any password in your environment. Setting the account lockout policy should include 3 other policy settings: account lockout duration, account lockout threshold, and reset account lockout after. All 4 of these settings have potential impact on each other. You should have a full understanding of how they impact each other before making these changes. So let's take a look at the account lockout duration. The account lockout duration policy setting determines the number of minutes that a locked out account remains locked out before automatically becoming unlocked. A value of 0 specifies that the account will be locked out until an administrator explicitly unlocks it. Now let's look at account lockout threshold. The account lockout threshold policy setting determines the number of failed sign-in attempts that will cause a user account to be locked. A locked account cannot be used until you reset it or until the number of minutes specified by the account lockout duration policy setting expires. You can set a value from 1 through 999 failed sign-in attempts, or you can specify that the account will never be locked by setting the value to 0. The threshold that you select is a balance between operational efficiency and security, and it depends on your organization's risk level. To allow for user error and to thwart brute force attacks, Windows security baselines recommend a value of 10 could be an acceptable starting point for your organization. Finally, let's look at Reset Account Lockout Counter After. The Reset Account Lockout Counter After policy setting determines the number of minutes that must elapse from the time a user fails to log on before the failed logon attempt counter is reset to 0. A disadvantage to setting this too high is that users lock themselves out for an inconveniently long period of time. Users may make excessive help desk calls. Suggested settings. You need to determine the threat level for your organization and balance that against the cost of your help desk support for password resets. Each organization will have specific requirements. Now, let's move on to number 7. Set minimum password length to higher limits. Vulnerability. The lower the number of the password length, the easier it is for an attacker to guess it. Suggested settings. Set minimum password length to at least a value of 8. Next, number 8. Password must meet complexity requirements. Vulnerability. Passwords that contain only alphanumeric characters are extremely easy to discover with several publicly available tools known as dictionary attacks. Potential impact. Passwords that do not meet complexity requirements are very easily hacked through brute force attacks. Number 9. Message title for users attempting to log on. Vulnerability. Not using this warning message policy setting leaves your organization legally vulnerable to trespassers who unlawfully penetrate your network. Potential impact. Legal precedents have established that organizations that display warnings to users who connect to their servers over a network have a higher rate of successfully prosecuting trespassers. Suggested settings. It is advisable to set the interactive logon message title for users attempting to log on to enabled. Number 10. Prompt user to change password before expiration. Vulnerability. Users will forget to change their password and cause an increase in help desk calls. Potential impact. Users will need warning that their passwords are going to expire, or they might inadvertently get locked out of the system. Suggested settings. Prompt user to change password before expiration to 5 days. When their password expiration date is 5 or fewer days away, users will see a dialog box each time they log on to the domain. Okay, let's move on to number 11, machine inactivity. Vulnerability. This policy setting helps you prevent unauthorized access to devices under your control when the currently signed-in user leaves without deliberately locking the desktop. Potential impact. This security policy setting can limit unauthorized access to unsecured computers. However, that requirement must be balanced with the productivity requirements of the intended user. Suggested settings. Set the time for elapsed user input inactivity time by using the security policy setting interactive logon, machine inactivity limit based on the device's usage and location requirements. For example, if the device or devices is in a public area, you might want to have the device automatically lock after a short period of inactivity to prevent unauthorized access. If you run computers that store sensitive data, with monitors displayed in unsecured locations, or if you have computers with sensitive data that are remotely accessed, revealing logged-on users' full names or domain account names might contradict your overall security policy. Number 12, selecting the option to elevate without prompting. Vulnerability. One of the risks that the user account control or UAC feature tries to mitigate is that of malicious software running under elevated credentials without the user or administrator being aware of its activity. Selecting the option to elevate without prompting minimizes the protection that is provided by UAC. We do not recommend selecting this value unless administrator accounts are tightly controlled and the operating environment is highly secure. It is recommended not to enable the built-in administrator account on the client computer, but to use the standard user account and user account control, UAC, instead. And lastly, number 13, detect application installations and prompt for elevation. Vulnerability. Many software install executables also have other applications or extensions that you may not want to have installed. Suggested setting, enable the user account control, detect application installations and prompt for elevation settings so standard users must provide administrative credentials before software is installed. Okay, now let's discuss security reviews and monitoring recommendations. Account reviews. Accounts should be reviewed on a semi-annual basis. Potential impact. An attacker could potentially enable a disabled account, then raise the account's privilege level. The only way to detect this is to review your administrative accounts. Here is a short list but important best practice to be reviewed. 1. Review administrative accounts, domain admin, enterprise admin, backup admin. 2. Disable account that have no activity in the past 120 days. Resetting passwords, although user passwords will be changed on a monthly or quarterly basis. The impact to the enterprise by a compromised administrative password could be disastrous. Here is a list of accounts that should be changed quarterly or every 6 months. 1. Reset administrator's password. 2. Reset PC local administrative passwords. 3. Reset server local administrative passwords. 4. Reset service account passwords. Resetting administrative accounts should be done with the utmost of caution. Finally, let's discuss continuous security event monitoring. Continuous monitoring is an essential step for organizations to identify and measure the security implications for planned and unexpected changes to accounts, hardware, software, firmware, and to assess vulnerabilities in a dynamic threat space. That's one of the beauties of continuous monitoring, it's threat agnostic. In the field of computer security, security information, and event management, software products and services combine with security information management and security event management. They provide real-time analysis of security alerts generated by applications and network hardware. A SIEM can be an expensive implementation. If you have nothing in place now, Start small and then plan. Make sure you understand that what you put in place will meet your expectations. I am completely out of time. I hope you found this video informative and I hope to see you next time. Please let Tom know I did a good job. He was thinking about replacing me with someone with a British accent. Thank you, and remember, Tom knows security.